Hello everyone, so this is going to be another question and answer video, and before we start I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who send me fantastic emails, left comments on my YouTube, Facebook, Twitter with fantastic questions, kind words. I appreciate every single one of you, and I do read through all of my comments. Sometimes I take a little bit longer to reply, but that's because I've just been receiving so many great comments from you guys. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. I'm going to be trying to establish this question and answer video format on a more frequent basis to probably answer the questions slightly faster than I've been doing recently. In the meantime, if you enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, help me grow my social media, reach out to more people, give this video a thumbs up. And with that being said, let's move on to the questions coming from my YouTube channel. Also, I'm going to be putting a timeline down below in the description box, so if you don't feel like watching for a whole video, you can skip to certain questions which you might feel are more relevant to you. So make sure to check out the description box to see the timeline for the questions. And with that being said, let's move on to our very first question, which comes from YouTube user by the name of Baseball4. And he or she asks me, hi, can you make a video explaining the difference between a dark and a bright tone? And that's a very good question. So to make it short and simple, basically the way I would explain dark versus bright sound is the low versus high frequencies. So the more low frequencies your timbre possesses, the darker the sound is. The brighter the sound is, the more higher frequencies it possesses. So if you look, for example, at instruments such as violin versus cello, even if you play the same note in the same range, just because of the thickness of the string, the warmer sound is going to be in the cello in comparison to violin. So it kind of works the same with euphonium. Some people have a little bit more of a higher frequency type of sound, and it sounds a little bit brighter, and that can be determined by certain factors related to the equipment, such as euphonium, mouthpiece, but mainly I would say it's 3 physical factors, such as your airspeed, the tightness or looseness of your lips, and the gap in between the lips. So the more gap, the looser the lips are, and the slower the air is, the darker the sound is going to be. And on the contrary, if you time the lips, keep the embouchure a little bit more firm, narrow the gap in between your lips a little bit more, the sound is going to be slightly brighter. And both of them playing styles have certain benefits and downsides. So you see different players have different approaches, and they can be mastered in both cases with very great success. It basically comes down to your choice of what kind of sound are you looking for. Are you looking for a little bit more of a brassy, high frequency sound, which is slightly brighter, or a little bit more of a kind of melodic, darker sound, which would be darker with low frequencies? So hopefully that answers the question. So the second question comes from Libertarian Capitalist. I'm going into my senior year of high school and like to play a solo with a band, but I can't decide between this solo, Carnival of Venice or Thoughts of Love by Arthur Pryor. Which do you think I should play? Well, basically it comes down to your preference. I guess Carnival of Venice is something that I really admired when I was around 13 or 14. I think I first played this solo when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I was really into playing all the fast, tricky stuff because it was a challenge for me. As the years passed by, I was starting to look for something that will be slightly more complex in terms of musicality, so my interest turned away from kind of air and very type of pieces, but nonetheless, it's a great piece. It's going to be a great challenge. The same thing goes to Thoughts of Love by Arthur Pryor. It's kind of similar style, air very thing with a little bit more melodic stuff coming from a trombone player. So apples and oranges, basically. So if this was a regular type of concert where you're just going to be playing with a piano, I'd say go for something that's going to be more challenging to you, that's going to make you a better player. And I assume that playing in front of band is not something that you get to do on a very frequent basis. So in that case, I would go for something that's going to be displaying your skill set the best, something that you're going to be feeling most comfortable with. Because if you're not used to playing with a band, there's going to be a bunch of other factors. It's going to be more complex in terms of hearing yourself, understanding the surrounding, understanding the band, following the conductor, maybe getting a little bit more nervous. So pick a solo which you feel like you're a little bit more comfortable with, and that would be my advice in terms of those two pieces. So the third question is coming from Russell Bradley, and the question is, did the Wessex Dolce feel sturdy in your hands and when you played it? I've been looking to find a second horn and it seems tempting, but some reviews say the horn feels very light and flimsy. So one thing I didn't really consider when I was making the review for Wessex Dolce is the thickness of the metal. And I did consider, but not in the way that it's going to be denting very easy. And bunch of people left a review saying that their Wessex Dolce or their JinBao was denting extremely easy from slight touches or slight bumps, and I could see where that could be a problem. I wouldn't say that it should be discouraging you from buying one. It's a cheap horn, is going to be lighter in terms of the materials they're using. They're not going to be putting a thick, expensive horn. It sounds good, it's easy to play, it's good in tune, and it's very cheap. That's something you should be expecting from a horn which is under $1,500, and it's still a horn which I recommend highly. And it's not the number one choice at this point for the horns below $1,500. I'd say if you want a little bit more of a sturdy horn, check JP274. It's a little bit better plated and definitely thicker in metal. It's a bit more heavy in terms of how it feels and how it plays. It's a bit more like comparing Yamaha versus Besson. So, but Wessex Dolce is definitely a good choice for a second horn or an alternative horn if you're a trombone player. So I wouldn't say the sturdiness should be something you should be really afraid of. Me personally, I'm not the most careful person when it comes to horns, so I could see where I could bend it really easy. This horn, I've bumped it so many times and pretty hard in certain cases, and I could dare you to find a single dent on that instrument. The metal is so thick, so I could see where it could be a problem. But again, I don't think that affects the quality of sound, playing ease, and tuning, except for you have to be a little bit more careful by a little bit better of the case. But either way, it's your choice. So hopefully that helps making a decision if you're planning to buy a second horn. So the fourth question is coming from Raul Ramos, and it says, "Thank you so much for your help. I'll be sure to implicate this into my daily routine." That's probably in reference to one of their routine videos, I assume. "And if you could, I've been having some trouble with lip slurs, and I would really appreciate it if you were to make a video on it, going into depth on how to improve on controlling your airspeed and lip control if you are able to. Thanks." That's definitely a video which I'm thinking of making, and that's not going to be a video, that's going to be more of a series of video. The big mistake, which when it comes to lip slurs, tonguing, or whatever people make, they assume it's one element which they need to fix, and that's the tricky part with brass playing. It's usually a compilation of things that come into play when you're looking for that high level of control when it comes to any skill set or any attribute of your playing. So when you're doing lip slurs, it's not only your embouchure, it's not only your speed, there's a bunch of small details which are gonna give you an edge in this particular aspect. So, and they all work together. And the problem sometimes when somebody's having a really good embouchure, it still doesn't mean that it's gonna work every single time when he's doing the lip, or he or she is doing lip slurs, just because some other aspects like airspeed, looseness of lips, shape of the mouth, posture, these things might not be working intact. So that can get really confusing to a little bit less experienced younger players, because sometimes they're actually doing things right. These people usually struggle to determine the actual culprit, so that's where a good tutor comes in hand. And giving you more personalized advice would be very hard without seeing you play, because this is a very broad topic to cover. But I'll be for sure making a series of videos on this topic in the future. So the next question comes from Fuentes, and he asks, "Hey Matonis, I made first band second chair last year, all regions, but my teacher said I could get first chair if I better my tone. He tells me to lower my jaw, and I try to lower it as much as I can, and he said it kind of gets better, but he still hears something's wrong." So to start with, it's a pretty decent tip, and the reason why you would normally want to lower jaw, particularly in the lower brass because of the larger mouthpiece, is because it helps to open up the gap in between the lips. So instead of having this stretched up embouchure, you drop your jaw and it opens up the gap, and it helps to project a little bit better. It makes the tone slightly darker and opens up your tone as well. The problem with that, once you drop your jaw, there's going to be way more engagement through muscles right here, and it's going to be way more stamina taxing. So normally for people who are not used to dropping their jaw, it takes a little bit of time to transition. Bear in mind, playing euphonium or playing any brass instrument or playing any instrument is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So be patient. It's going to take time. Give yourself a reasonable goal. So let's say you've got a decent low range with your drop jaw, and you're struggling to go in your higher range, because that's a usual circumstance, which at least I see people who try to improve their tone by dropping the jaw a little bit. So give yourself a reasonable goal of improving those high notes note by note every single month, while maintaining a really good middle range, lower range. Practice a lot of bend exercises, practice a lot of long tone exercises, and focus on maintaining that embouchure really round, really open, with the jaw dropping down. And a really good telltale sign is if you look at the mirror, and if you're dropping the jaw correctly, and if you're forming the embouchure correctly, the corners of your lips are going to be facing downwards. So, and if you're having a smiley embouchure, that's a no on euphoniums, at least in your case, since you're trying to open up the tone a little bit more. So it's a little bit awkward to hear a comment from a tutor saying that he still hears something wrong, because that's not really helpful. You should be a little bit more specific if that's actually what he told you, because what does something mean? I mean, that doesn't really tell you anything. Is there air leaking? Is there tightness in tone? What's wrong? So if I was you, I would approach your tutor and try to clarify what exactly he meant by saying something wrong. But otherwise, take time. That's my top tip for you in this particular scenario. Take time, practice, you'll get used to it. It's gonna become a habit. Okay, so the following question comes from Angel Dominguez, and the question is, do you have a specific comment for the SM3U? Thanks. So the SM3U is a Dennis Wick, Stephen Mead series Ultra mouthpiece, and the 3 is the size indicator. It's not the most frequent size for the mouthpiece. The number 4 would be something you would see most often from the players who use Dennis Wick, and normally that's supposed to be a transitioning size for the mouthpiece for the players who originate in tuba and who double on euphonium, or who transitioning to euphonium, because it's slightly larger. And I know Steve is one of those players who used to play for a vast majority of his life on that particular size, which is slightly larger than normal. I believe, as far as I'm aware, by the time I was finishing my studies at the Royal Northern, he was switching to slightly smaller mouthpiece, which is now the SM 3.5U or something like that. And the main reason was the stamina. I believe when he was premiering the Diamonds Concerto by Philip Spark, he was complaining that he was struggling to get through the whole concerto with the other pieces or whatever, and he was considering switching to the smaller mouthpieces, as far as I can remember. At least that was from the off-record talks we had in the classes. So if you're a euphonium player, I'm not exactly sure whether I would recommend this. To start with, the series, the SMU, the Ultra series, those are great mouthpieces. I recommend them to vast majority of players who like to get a dark, authentic euphonium sound. But the sizes where I sometimes would not necessarily be too happy with, because it gets to the point where if you were to listen to yourself, if you were to record yourself from the audience perspective, it's hard to feel much of a difference. Technically, it's supposed to open up the sound a little bit more, help to project, and I would see where it would give you an edge on the lower range. But for the total package, I think it does affect your stamina in a pretty significant way, at least from what I've tried, because I've experimented with larger mouthpieces, and I don't think it gives you that much of an edge to the tone quality or the projection to the point where it will be worth sacrificing the stamina. On the other hand, if you're one of those players who have ultra thick lips and they're really wide and thick, it might be a solution for you. It comes down to your preference, but if you're a beginning player and you're looking a good mouthpiece to start with, or even intermediate players, I would probably recommend the SM4U, or at least any other mouthpiece that size. So I believe it will be Schiller 51 or something like that, and it will be the number 5 on Parker, but it's the same standard mouthpiece size. Otherwise, those are great mouthpieces, and you're not gonna, regret getting one. At least I played on SM Ultras for many years, and those are great mouthpieces. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, so the next one comes from Kyle JH. I know it's a little off topic, but I'm a euphonium player who's shortly going to be a freshman in college. I was wondering if you think that adding a trigger to my euphonium with a kit like the one made by MTP in Germany is a good idea. Waiting and getting a newer euphonium with a pre-installed trigger after I graduate is a better idea. Thanks. Okay, so I would definitely recommend you getting a trigger added. So if you don't have an access to euphonium which has already one, will be a way cheaper, more affordable option to get a trigger installed as a separate kit. And the thing you need to understand that is going to take you quite a lot of time learning how to use it functionally, because it's like a new valve. It is literally a new valve. So imagine if you had an extra, if you've got euphonium with 4 valves, now you had another 5th valve somewhere there, and now you have to learn how to use it on certain notes, learn it, how to use it functionally in fast passages, when to use it, when to probably not use it. So it's gonna be something that's gonna time consume by itself. So definitely get it as soon as possible in order to make it functional, because a lot of players who have a trigger, they don't even use it properly. So it's gonna take you a little bit of time, so definitely get it added, and that'll be my suggestion. It's gonna be cheaper and they work well. I've got a Besson Sovereign in my house which has an added trigger. It works just as fine as any other trigger. The one which is on my euphonium was factory added. It came with a trigger when I got the euphonium, so it works perfect. But just add one and it'll be, you save money and you can start learning your trigger use straight away. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so the following question comes from Freezing Gamer, and the question is, can you post a video about JinBao, Mack Brass, and Schillers? So this is going to be the very next video I'm going to be making. So already organized the Mack Brass, Schiller euphoniums that I can test, and I'm gonna have a JP274. So JinBao is basically the original version of Mack Brass and Schillers. Those companies just buy the instruments in the Chinese factories and make slight adjustments. So I'm gonna talk in detail on how those adjustments impact the quality of the instrument, whether it's worth spending additional money, and how those two instruments compare with a similar price JP274. And I'm gonna do a little bit of test playing and compare it with my Sterling Virtuoso to give you a better clue of how it matches up with a high-end professional euphonium. So that's definitely going to be a next video coming after I'm finished with this Q&A. So yeah, there's going to be one. So the next one comes from Mr. Bennett, and the question is, why do you prefer to read B-flat treble clef? So the reason for that is because I come from Europe, and that's just the way we're taught. When I started learning music, we were taught to learn the treble clef, and that's just, you know, the way they normally teach euphonium players in most of the European countries, because those are the very brass band based players, unlike the United States, where you have a lot of military band players which read in bass clef in concert pitch. So that's pretty much the reasoning. There's no special, you know, complex, you know, answer for that thing. We're just the way we're taught there. Another question from Freezing Gamer, YEP 642 or Wessex Dolce? So by YEP, he means Yamaha YEP 642 or Wessex Dolce. Definitely YEP 642. It's different category of an instrument. It's a professional instrument. It's gonna be better instrument. It's gonna, whether if you were talking price per what you're getting, it's gonna be a debate. Is YEP 642 a better instrument? Yes, it is. It definitely has an edge. I wouldn't say it's like night and day, but if you had an option, if somebody was giving you two instruments to choose from and you had a Yamaha YEP 642 versus Wessex Dolce, definitely get Yamaha 642. The next question comes from Euphonium Time, and the question is, hi buddy, where has the black lacquer gone off the second valve slide? So I assume he's referring to my instrument, and I don't know whether anyone noticed, but if you look at the second valve slide, the lacquer went from black to the gold. And the reasoning for that is they made a little improvement to the instrument. So they decreased the diameter, I believe, by 2 millimeters on the second valve slide in order to improve the tuning for the concert A's. So, and decrease the resistance a little bit in the higher range and accuracy. So they just sent me this one, and technically I could have resent them to put the lacquer on. I could sprayed it myself, but I can't be bothered. It's just a tool. That instrument is just a tool for me, and I really appreciate it. I love the instrument, but I couldn't be bothered putting the work, and it doesn't bother me. So there's no magical answer. It doesn't increase the performance, the color. It's just a different slide. I sent that one back to them, and I just received that one. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so the next question comes from Matthew Allen, and the question is, I've got some air issues. When I play my instrument, some air is being directed into my nose, causing extra pressure, and I'm not sure how to fix this problem. Do you have any suggestions? So this is, again, a pretty common issue with a lot of beginning players, and believe it or not, there's some pros to what you're doing in terms of, or at least some pros to the leakage through the nose, air leakage through the nose. It usually means that your sinuses are really open. So basically what happens when you're trying to exhale the air and there's too much pressure here and you're forcing the air out, it has to come out somewhere. And if the gap closes, then the air has to come through the nose. So instead of, if you're blowing the air and suddenly starts bursting through the nose. So if there's too much tension here and the gap closes, the air forces through the nose, and that's where you start hearing that a little bit nosy, airy sound. So the good thing about it, as I mentioned, although it's gonna be hard to believe, is the fact that your sinus is probably pretty open. So that means that normally you try to open up your sinuses right here to project a little bit more and to have a little bit bigger sound, and it's easier to leak the air through. However, there's blockage here. So you need to learn how to relax this a little bit more and open up the gap. So what I would recommend is learning how to drop your jaw a little bit. So if I was to grab my instrument, instead of closing the gap, I would try to breathe with the mouth really open. And focus on dropping that jaw to keep the sound open, relax. It's gonna take you a little bit of time, but that's definitely time worth investing because it's gonna help you in the long run. It's gonna eliminate that problem. But it's definitely caused by a tension in here. So try to focus on feeling what's happening here, and whenever you start hearing a little bit of noise in your nose, take a minute off, regroup, and start by doing some low long tones or low tones with whatever, and it's gonna be eliminated over time as long as you're, addressing the issue with certain practice. So I have no clue how to read in Japanese, so I cannot pronounce the username, but basically it says, "I'm Japanese, I like your videos, but I do not understand English. Will you give me subtitles, Google translations?" So yes, if you have videos which you specifically like me to, some of them I have subtitles for, so some of them I don't, but feel free to shoot me an email. It's gonna be in the description box below. And if I have the script for that particular video, I'm gonna send you the script with everything that I'm talking written down, so in English, so you'll be able to Google Translate. Otherwise, I don't know if there's any Japanese fans looking at my videos that feel like doing subtitles for my videos. I would gladly appreciate it. Shoot me an email. I'll definitely give you credit for that, and I'll be able to upload some of them translations on my videos. That would be really useful. So, but thanks for watching my videos anyways, and shout out to Japan. The next question, or not necessarily question, but the comment that I found very interesting comes from Michael Kirby. And it says, it comes from a video where I did a little bit comparison between Jupiter, Besson, and Sterling instruments. And Michael says, "I would like to argue with what you said about the Besson. My teacher has a Besson Sovereign from the mid-70s, and I've used it several times when I had problems with my horn. Her Sovereign has the best response and tone of any horns I've ever personally played. I've played Prestige, Sterling Virtuoso, various Jupiter models, Yamaha horns, and many others. And it's safe to say that her old mid-70s horn is the most free-blowing horn I've ever played. To be fair, that horn has seen hell. Its original owner was the Euphonium instructor at MCU for many years. And then about 10 years ago, the horn was sold to my teacher. That horn has had a lot of time to really unlock and become a reliable instrument. So that may be part of it. And on the untunefulness, I think you are right about the newer Besson horns, but I think the older ones, almost everything is in tune. Even the sharp sixth partial is almost unnoticeable on the older Sovereigns. The only tuning issue is that the open A flat, normally around 20 cents flat, is almost twice that on the Besson. To be fair, that note is already nearly unusable on any horns, so it's not too tragic that it's like that on the Besson. And I definitely agree with what you say, and that's a big problem I had with a lot of Besson horns, and I probably should have clarified. The one I used in the video was a newer version. So Sterling, the owner of Sterling Instruments was the guy who worked in the old Besson factory and who helped to design and create the old Bessons back when they didn't belong to the Buffet and Crampton. And nowadays that consistency levels between the newer Bessons sometimes fluctuate a little bit. So what I normally experience with Bessons, the great Besson is fantastic. If you get a hold of good Besson, it's as good as the instrument as it comes. But sometimes if you spend a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars, and you get a tested Euphonium which has inconsistencies in comparisons to some of the good instruments, that's a big problem. And if you had a hold of a really, really good Sovereign good for you. And I totally believe what you said about the quality of the instrument. I've played some fantastic Bessons, and I'm not trying to say that all the sovereigns or all the brass instruments, of a certain brand are going to be this or that, black or white. There's always a fluctuation. Some brands have larger fluctuation and some of them don't. At least I know with Sterling, it's usually pretty consistent. They don't make instruments in a high quantity as Besson does, and a lot of parts, every single part on Sterling Virtuoso is handmade and made in a small factory, which I've seen in my own eyes, and I know there's a special attention put into every single instrument, so it's being tested afterwards, and that's the reason why I like this instrument. But in terms of the Sovereign, it's a great instrument if you get a good one. It's not so good if you get an average one, so there's definitely an argument to be had here, but I would see where your point is very, very valid. So definitely a good comment, and I appreciate you leaving your own opinion. It definitely matters, and I believe a lot of viewers are going to find useful reading comments such as this with detailed explanation from your personal experience. So shout out to you, Michael. Okay, so the turtle guy asks, could you please link the website where you purchased the Sterling Euphonium, and what model is it? Or what model is the best in your opinion? So I didn't really purchase my Sterling from the website. I met with the owner and I just got mine in the factory. I've tested a couple of the instruments and I just picked the one which I liked. So that was probably like 4 years ago or something, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. In terms of the websites which you could buy Sterling Euphonium, I definitely recommend going to dfmusicinc.com. They give a discount to my users with discount code Matones, same as my username on YouTube. And they're a very reliable distributor here in the United States. They offer good pricing, so they offer this discount. And you'll be able to find 4 different models. So the number 4 would be the full model, which you would get right here. The black lacquer, I don't think is an option because that was a very specific thing I asked. I didn't like the gold plating for my personal reasons. I just wanted the instrument to look a little bit different. So I don't think getting a black lacquer would be an option, but definitely it's model 4. And I would highly recommend you getting it from dfmusicinc.com. Type in the discount code, is going to give you 10%, which from high-end, top-line, expensive model, it's a significant savings. And that's a very reliable distributor, which gives you a warranty. If something happens during the shipping, they reship a new instrument or fix the instrument, whatever it takes, so you're not going to be disappointed. And I feel very comfortable recommending that distributor because I had business with them and I know that's a reliable person who's running the company. So check it out. You'll also be able to find the link to the website in the description box below. So Olaf Bork asks, why do you use that hand strap? What is it? So what he's referring to is this little gadget right here, and this is the quick horn rinse hand strap. And basically I got one from Bill Ricker, who's the CEO of the company or the owner of the company, and he sent me to test one and I just put it on, and it basically what it does, it takes off the pressure from your forearm to some extent. If I was very, very honest, I'm not gonna say it's gonna make night and day difference, but it helps me to extend the time I can hold the instrument in a good position without fatiguing my shoulder and forearm, because usually it starts with fatiguing your forearm and then shoulder takes over and then breathing becomes hard and labored. So it adds another 10 or 15 minutes to what I would normally do, and it's pretty cheap. I believe it's around $25, $20, $30, so it's definitely not one of those gadgets which is going to cost you $300 and is going to give you like additional 20 seconds of good posture time. It's pretty cheap, so definitely worth experimenting with, and it's not gonna make night and day difference, but it's definitely something that I find useful, and it's pretty affordable. So check quickhornrinse.com and you'll be able to find that hand strap, which is just basically taking the weight from your forearm a little bit. Robert Walter asks, #Matonis, thank you. Can you do a video on slotting? So I would be able to do a video on slotting if I knew better what slotting was. So that was actually the first time I've heard this term, and I had to do a little bit of research on what it was. And apparently it has to do something with the accuracy, centering, and the vibrations of the notes. So if anyone watching this video knows a little bit more on slotting, it's a little bit embarrassing because I probably should know what the term is, or at least maybe I know, but not this particular term. So, but if somebody feels like they have a legit information on what slotting is, feel free to put the comment down below and explain a little bit better and share it with me and the other users, because I'm kind of clueless. So in terms of answering your questions, sorry my friend, I'll be honest, I'm kind of clueless on what slotting is, so not much of a help, but at least I'm being honest. Okay, so Sakidra Harel, and sorry if I'm butchering the name, but asks, I'm a first-time beginner in the band and for the trumpet. However, I don't play the trumpet anymore because my music teacher changed my instrument. Don't know why, but now I play the baritone and I'm having trouble. Also, I do softball and karate, and I was wondering how will it affect me physically and mentally. Last thing, I'm doing too much. Will doing too much interfere with each other? So, for those who've been following me for a longer time, probably you know that I'm a big proponent of sports, and I've been doing that competitively, and that's a huge part of my life, something that I do on a daily basis. Weightlifting, powerlifting, and kickboxing is something that I do on very, very frequent basis. And in terms of mental benefits, I find it massive. It helps me to relax. It helps me to get away from the stress, especially when you spend so much energy practicing, trying to get better. So it's definitely something that I would recommend to every single person. Physically, I'm not gonna say it's gonna interfere with your playing as long as you don't do anything crazy. So you mentioned that you do karate. So karate is probably one of the safer contact sports, because normally we're talking about point karate, where it's all about getting in, getting out, and it's not necessarily about inflicting as much damage to your body, face, your hands, or whatever. It's about scoring points. So as long as you don't mess up your lips, you don't mess up your knuckles, your fingers, you don't break your hands, I don't see how it will impact you in a negative way. However, the physical abilities and the physical conditioning of your body is gonna have a huge positive impact on your playing. Posture, breathing, muscle support, muscle strength is a big thing in brass playing. It's a physical thing, no matter whatever people say. We use the law there. It's a very physical thing. We hold an instrument which is pretty heavy and significant amount of weight to hold in front of your body, and it's definitely going to require some physical conditioning. So by all means, do sport, do as much as you can, enjoy it, don't restrict yourself from any physical activities. As long as you're staying smart and not overdoing it, you're only going to see positive impacts on whatever your sports are going to do in terms of your playing. So definitely a thumbs up for physical activities. And thumbs up for doing karate. It's pretty badass. Mr. SureShot95 asks, what type of mouthpiece do you use? Great video. Thank you very much. And the mouthpiece which I use is Parker 5G51, and this is how it looks. Gold rim. I kind of picked my parts myself, so because it's attachable. It's a mouthpiece with attachable parts, so you can detach the rim, you can detach the cup, and you can detach the shank. So it comes in handy in terms of picking the mouthpiece which suits best for what you're trying to get out of your instrument in terms of sound, ease, clarity, range, and also the ability to use different shanks will allow you to use the same mouthpiece if you're doubling on baritone or whatever, which usually uses a smaller shank. So these are great mouthpieces. These are by far the best mouthpieces I've ever tried, and I've tried quite a few in pretty much every single aspect. They're a little bit on the expensive side, and I know that they're being manufactured, different parts are being manufactured in different places, so sometimes it might be tricky getting one. But if you ever come to one of these, I hate when this phone makes that sound, I should switch it off, sorry for that guys. But if you ever come across to one of those, give it a try. I promise you're gonna like it. Benny M wants to know, is playing the euphonium in only treble clef viable? Because right now I play the treble clef in middle school going to high school, and I'm so used to it. I'm trying to learn bass clef, but it's so confusing and hard. I'm able to not have to learn bass clef, or is treble clef a mistake I should be burned? It definitely shouldn't be burned, but in terms of viable, depends what you want to do. I'd say probably not. Unless you're going to be isolated to purely solo playing with piano or whatever, then you can be a snowflake and choose the clefs that you like. But in most case scenarios, you're not going to be very giggable. And by giggable, I mean many cases. When I play in a brass band with the River City, it's 50-50. Sometimes it's bass clef, sometimes it's treble clef. When I moved to USA, my bass clef was, I knew basics on how to kind of read it, but I couldn't side read it to any good level or any functional level, and it was a huge struggle. I had to learn it to the point where now I'm pretty flexible with both clefs. My side reading gone so much better, and many gigs, if somebody is gonna offer you a gig, let's say somebody gives you a call, can you play tomorrow, give you $500, and I need you to play these super simple tunes, pop tunes or whatever. You go, sure, $500, that's awesome. You go to the gig and they give you these super easy tunes which you would be able to nail in terms of side reading in your treble clef, but you don't know your bass clef and you're screwed. So I would say definitely learn it. The problem, it's a long-term thing. So the way I would start learning it is by adding little things in terms of your exercises. So start, looking at some scales in bass clef or whatever, and gradually spend like 5 minutes a day, then go to 10 minutes a day, because you don't want to stop your progress by just going to learn clef and not being able to play at your full potential. So spend 5-10 minutes a day. Once you get a little bit more comfortable, start adding some pieces or etudes or studies, whatever you feel like adding, but it's definitely a gradual process. So start learning the bass clef as soon as you can, and once you get a little bit more comfortable, you'll notice that it does not make all that much of a difference, but do implement it on a daily basis. That's the key. Regular, consistent daily basis, and you'll get better at it definitely pretty quick. So hopefully that helps. Ivan Jarpa asks, hey, I found an Austin euphonium at $325. It sounds very illogical, but I had never tried that euphonium. What would you recommend? So obviously $325, you have to have reasonable expectations. So what would I recommend? If you don't have euphonium and you need the euphonium which is affordable, yeah, get it. A crappy euphonium or okay euphonium is better than no euphonium. Most of my life, up until I was probably 17 or 18 years old, I played on complete pieces of junk. They would not cost like $100. They were like, I don't even know whether they had brands. They looked like made up, homemade kind of euphoniums. They're a complete piece of junk, and I was capable of squeezing a lot of juices out of those. And when I was 17 or 18 or something like that, or 16, within those years, I got my Besson new standard, which was okay, but it was not, excellent. And around third year of my undergrad studies, that's when I got the top line Prestige, Besson Prestige, and later on I switched to Sterling. So if you don't have any options, definitely get it, have reasonable expectations, but I assume you're a beginner who's just looking for a cheap euphonium, and it's not gonna make much of a difference because any euphonium is gonna give you enough of the, window in terms of like learning and what you can squeeze out. So definitely get it if that's the only option. If you can save up to buy one of those JP274, Wessex Dolce, Schiller, Mack brass, definitely a good investment. And those are, pretty high quality instruments, which are gonna get you pretty far in terms of your, playing career. So, but otherwise, I've never tried the instrument myself, so, give it a go and you'll see it's $325, not the biggest investment, and you're gonna get something. So Vincent Manua asks, will I be able to get a warm-up routines to improve my tone? And that usually, that I assume comes from my full practice routine video. So normally my private students, I create them personalized routines which they own, and I don't really give them to anyone else apart from them, because that's a part of a deal. I get paid money to teach them, and I provide them with routines which are very specifically designed to improve their skills and to cater their goals. In terms of my own personal routines, I don't normally do them on Excel, so I just write them out by hand, because doing them on Excel and making them look pretty like I did those notes, it's very time consuming. It's just not worth it. Usually I have like a little notebook like this where I make notes and stuff, which, usually basically how I base my routines and how I structure and how I plan. So if you want to get the notes which I use from my full practice routine video, I'm more than happy to share with you. Just shoot me an email, which you're gonna find down below in the description box, and I'm gonna send you a zip file, and you'll be able to at least see how I plan and structure. In terms of customizing you warm-up routines, it's tricky. Again, it's a very broad question. I don't know how old are you, how many years have you been playing euphonium, how good are you, and I've never heard you play, so that would be a tricky one, and also is gonna consume me a lot of time. So I can definitely share some of the notes with you, and feel free to shoot me an email. So the following question comes from FaZe, and yes, hey Matt, I'm using a Yamaha custom YB842 serial number. I'm not gonna give out a serial number, but he gave me a serial number of the instrument with Dennis Wick Ultra SM4X, but my conductor says I sound like a baritone, so what I got from that was I sound bright. So do you have any tips on how to achieve a darker sound on euphonium? And he also sent me some samples of him playing, which I'm gonna play for you right now. So let me start off by saying that I actually think your sound is pretty good. It definitely has some brightness, especially as you go higher, but I can definitely hear that you're moving a lot of air. There's a lot of control, and the timbre, the tone is kind of smallish and a little bit bright, but you have the pretty timbre, and it's definitely a very moving musical sound. So what I'm hearing from this little sample, and I think that would be a pretty accurate diagnosis, is that the gap is pretty tight. There's some tightness happening here, especially as you go high. So instead of going, you do almost vice versa, where you go, where it's a little bit forced, a little bit tight for that air to move properly. So Again, what I would recommend is practicing the drop of the jaw in order to open up that little gap in between your lips. Move the air really slow, so have that warm airflow. And try to drop the jaw as much as functionally possible and practice it. So a very relaxed, very warm, very open sound. Definitely, I can hear some tightness happening here. So, and also another thing that I noticed, one of your breaths was pretty loud. I've heard a little bit of, so pay attention to the sound of your breath. If you're doing it correctly with an open throat, it's supposed to be very seamless and very open. It's supposed to be, and it's a way more efficient way of breathing, and it's gonna give you a better results in terms of not only taking more air, but setting yourself into a better position for the exhale. Another thing which is worth considering is the instrument. Now, the mouthpiece which you're using is definitely something that is gonna contribute to a darker sound, so I don't think the problem is in the mouthpiece. The Yamaha 842 is something that I've got quite a bit of experience with since the second euphonium in the River City where I plays the identical euphonium, and it definitely, and I had an opportunity to play it not only as a testing environment but also as a performance environment. So it definitely has quite a bit of brightness to it. You can still definitely get a way warmer sound out of your Yamaha than you would probably assume, but if you're looking for that really dark sound, I think a good instrument to go with would be Sterling, Besson, then newer Adams with the heavy valve caps have a pretty warm sound as well. But apart from that, great playing, my friend, and just work on relaxing your lips a little bit. Don't have it too tight. Form a rounder embouchure and try to open up your space in between the lips a little bit more, and it'll definitely do the trick in terms of making your sound a little bit warmer and darker. So the last question from YouTube comes from Jade Wolf, and he asks, can trombone mouthpieces be used on euphonium and vice versa? And the answer is definitely yes. Whether that's the best option, that's debatable. So in order to get the authentic trombone or euphonium sound, you have to consider a couple of things. What kind of sound is the authentic sound? So normally when you're thinking about euphonium, you're thinking about the low frequency, dark, warm sound. And when you're thinking about trombone, you're normally thinking a very light, crystal clear, bright, strong, powerful sound. So my experiences, mouthpieces like Schiller, Bach, and other lighter mouthpieces which are easy to play on don't work the best on euphonium, even though quite a few euphonium players use those mouthpieces on their instruments. But for me personally, it doesn't get that very warm, very dark, very singing tone. Whereas if you tried using some of the Dennis Wick mouthpieces and some of the darker tone producing mouthpieces on trombone, it's not going to sound very good either. Although on the other hand, again, I've seen plenty of trombone players using Dennis Wick with great success, so it definitely can be used. It's pretty much the same. Whether it's the most optimal option, that's for you to choose and for you to decide. So, but yeah, sure, use it. See no issues. The same shank size, same rim size, so definitely go for it. And lastly, there's going to be a couple of questions from my Facebook fan page. So Lickchurn asks, I would like to ask how to focus on the music while having to march. I'm having my first outdoor performance in a few weeks with no experience whatsoever and have a hard time focusing on not only the rhythm but also the formation, the weight of the tuba. And with all this, my mind is distracted from the song, and either I play it out of rhythm or can't seem to remember the parts or even relax. Any advice? Yeah, that's gonna be a tricky one. So marching is not something I do on frequent basis, but I have some experience. And I had a marching concert not too long ago, probably a couple months ago, and we played simple melodies, which in normal circumstances would be a piece of cake for me. I've never had such a labored playing in my life ever. By the end of the marching session, I sounded like crap. And the answer for that is, it's just, you're not used to it. It's gonna take time. It's a skill set. It's a completely different ball game, something you need to practice for extended period of times. And when you see those really good marching band players, they've been doing that stuff and practicing their posture, their movement, because the way you move your feet, you have to be very smooth. You always have to be on your toes, not to lift your feet too much, not to lose that balance and disrupt your posture and playing, and not to move the facial not to move the mouthpiece from your face too much in order to disrupt that embouchure. So it's gonna be a skill. If you've never done that and you're just doing it because somebody asked you and you got the opportunity, it's gonna be quite an experience. I don't think that's gonna be an issue which is fixable with some sort of a quick solution. So, but practice your movement. Make sure that you're always on your fingertips, that you're walking smooth. Another thing, you said you're playing tuba. Normally when you're in marching band, you play a sousaphone, because even the name sousaphone comes from Sousa. That's, a famous march composer. So sousaphone is a way better design in terms of ergonomics for marching. So if you can get a hold of sousaphone, I would definitely say use sousaphone rather than tuba, because the weight is going to be way more centered rather than something you have to hold in front of you, and that's going to be a very tricky thing to deal with when trying to walk and play at the same time. So I know this is probably not the advice which you wanted to hear, but if you really want to get better at marching, you have to practice it on a regular basis and just get comfortable with the movement to the point where your feet and everything is moving independently and you don't have to focus on your movement and you can focus on the music. So that's that. The second question from Facebook comes from a user, I think I cannot pronounce the name because it's written in a foreign language, but anyways, the question is, hello there, I was considering lately on how should my lips be while I'm playing, and I would like to ask for your opinion. So should the lips be wet or dry? Is it okay if they are not polished smooth? Does those things even affect playing? I thought that my lips may be getting tired quickly if I kept them wet. I don't know if you have covered this on your videos because I haven't seen them since some time ago. I'll see them again today as I'll have some free time. Keep up the good work. So first thing you need to consider in terms of stamina is going to be your technique and experience. So that's number one. Secondly, something that you'll have to pay attention to is your hydration. You have to have blood volume in your lips. You need to be fully hydrated and rested. So if the lips are flat, there's no blood in it, they're not going to be vibrating properly and you're going to be getting tired very quickly. In terms of should your lips be wet or dry, I'd say neither. They should be in between. You don't want them slippery and wet, but you don't want them chalky and dry. So for example, sometimes when I personally play, I don't get my lips too wet. I normally get them slightly on a drier side, so I tend to lick them once in a while, and once I lick them, I just wipe it off with my hand. It looks a little bit messy, but you do what you have to do. If you get a little bit of flakiness in your lips, a little bit skin detaching, maybe you're nervous, you're sweating, so that's a tricky situation. That's again where I would recommend you cleaning your face. Another thing you could do, sometimes when you're in a performance situation and when you're a little bit nervous, you tend to press the mouthpiece a little bit too much, and there's a little bit skin left on your mouthpiece. So I would wipe off the mouthpiece as well in order to get a better contact, a more smooth contact. And otherwise, in terms of stamina, I'll have to say that's something you'll acquire through years and years of playing. It's mostly technique, a lot of experience, and what you mentioned in terms of conditioning of your lips, whether they're wet or dry, is going to be such a minor factor that at your point I wouldn't even be paying attention to it. Trust me, if you're having fatigue issues, it's not because your lips are wet or dry. It's going to be, unless you're at that point where you're looking for that 1% edge, that's not a factor that should be entering your mind at any point. So work on your technique, work on consistency, and acquiring that stamina throughout the months and months and years of the years in playing. So that would be my answer. And last question comes from Adam Duke, and we had a little bit of a conversation, and later on he asked me a question which sounds like, I've been practicing, trying to do it every day. I need to control my breathing better. Any ideas? Again, very broad question. Control in breathing is something that you'll acquire throughout long period of time. It's playing a brass instrument, and I've said this numerous times. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's all about obtaining good habits and making playing a very habitual type of activity. So, and habits are being developed through consistent daily practice and good practice, because you can develop bad habits. So in terms of controlling your breathing, I don't know exactly your case, what the problem is. Some people feel uncomfortable with inhaling a large amount of air, which is probably more than 70% of their capacity, or exhaling beyond certain points. So the way I would practice it is I would try to breathe in as much air with as little effort as possible, and breathe out as much air with as little effort as possible in a safe, relaxing, comfortable practice room environment. So always push for that edge. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations and try to stay composed, try to stay relaxed, and over time it's going to become way more comfortable. So I know that's probably not a very specific explanation, but that was a very broad question, and I literally have no clue where your breathing in terms of the skill set stands. So, but hopefully this is going to help. Okay, so this is going to be it for this question and answer video. It's been a lengthy one, but I just wanted to take a little bit of time to answer every single question that I missed out within the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate every single comment you leave, guys, and I do read it through. It's just nowadays, time-wise, is not a viable option for me to reply with text answer, because it's just so time consuming. But I do want to acknowledge every single one of you, and I do sincerely want to help you become better at your craft, whether you're trombone, euphonium, trumpet player, whatever. I try to do my best to give you information to the best of my knowledge. So hopefully these answers are not only going to benefit the persons who are asking the questions, but everyone else who are watching the videos as well. If you like these videos, please do me a favor by giving a thumbs up, subscribing to my YouTube channel. You can also find me on other social media platforms such as YouTube, such as Twitter, Facebook, and make sure to check out the dfmusicking.com. That's dealer which I rely on in the United States, and they give my YouTube followers a 10% discount with discount code Matonis. So it's definitely worth checking out and saving some money. In the meantime, I really appreciate your time watching. Stay safe, work hard, keep motivated. Until the next time, my friends.